thank you for stopping by. I'm so glad you're here. In this video, I'm going to be making a shirt jacket using this pattern, Vogue Paris Original Christian Dior Shirt Jacket. I think this is from 1977. It is a size 40, so this is really the last generation, one of the last generations of the one size per pattern patterns, so just size 40 in here. I like this era, like sort of 70s, late 60s, 70s patterns. At least for the men's patterns that I found, they mark the stitching line as well as the cut line that includes the seam allowance. So if you wanted to alter the seam allowance on these, you could easily just cut the pattern out to the stitching line and then add in your own allowance, which I think is kind of helpful. I'm not going to be doing it this time, but if I'm doing like felled seams or something, sometimes I add a little bit more of a seam allowance just to make that easier. So the fabric I'm going to be using is a chocolate brown wool that I got at a thrift store. I showed that in a previous video, I think maybe the 19th century trousers when I first got it. And then I also showed it when I was doing the WTF Should I Sew video. I'm going to try my best to make it show up on camera. It's such a dark color that I've been struggling with that a little bit. So some of these clips might be super overexposed, but I got to do what I got to do to make it actually show up on camera. In my last video, I mentioned a half lining for this coat, but once I actually pulled out the pattern and looked at it more closely, I realized it doesn't actually require a half lining. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make the pattern as is first, and then when I'm done with it, if I want to go back and add a lining into it, I will. I'll dive into the construction here in just a second, but on a side note, I've gotten a couple of new vintage sewing machines. I've gotten a few new vintage men's sewing patterns. And I'm also planning on starting a little bit different types of projects, different types of sewing projects than I have done before. I've also rearranged and reorganized my sewing room. I'm thinking about making a video or two going over those things, and if anybody would be interested in watching those, please let me know. But let's get started on this shirt jacket now. So this is Vogue pattern 1609. Vogue Paris Original Christian Dior Shirt Jacket. I bought this off eBay. It comes with the shirt jacket and a pair of pants. So when I got the pattern, the pants had been cut out already and the pieces were kind of in a bad shape, well, medium shape, but the jacket hadn't been cut out at all, so that was great. It was still in its original condition. So I just cut everything out, obviously. Then I'm just gonna line it up to the fabric. This is that brown wool. Pattern weighted my pieces into place. I'm not pinning because I don't want to pin through the pattern. I want to try to keep the pattern in its best condition as I can. Then I just going around it with some tailor's chalk and marking the little dots and whatnot. Now obviously just cutting out the pieces. This is pretty standard. It goes how it goes every time. This fabric is folded in half, obviously, right sides together. Then I had to fiddle a little bit to get the second part done. I had barely just enough fabric here. I don't normally cut it this close, and I know some people cut it much closer than that. I'm not used to doing that, but I made it work. After I cut out all of the pattern pieces, I matched them back to their paper pieces, just used clothespins to keep them all together. And then I stacked them in reverse order from the highest to the lowest number, so they would be stacked with the correct construction order. So the lowest number pieces on top that I'm going to be using first, and the highest number pieces on bottom that I'm going to be using last. Okay, so I have the first section of these instructions done. I really like the way these instructions separate things by sections, and then there are steps within that. For some reason, when it's like step one and then there's like 6 different parts to step 1, that just really confuses me. But if it's sort of visually its own section, and then it's like step 1 through 11 and this visual section, it makes a lot of sense. So this was the first part I finished, which was making the front facings, attaching the yoke pieces to the back, the yoke and the yoke lining, and then attaching the front pieces to the yoke, and then top stitching down the yoke over the front so it encased the seam and it gives it like sort of a nice sturdy look to it. I did a double line of top stitching on that. So now it's time to move on to this second section here, which is basically just adding the sleeve plackets. And I like how it's its own visual section, but it's also continuing on with the numbers. So the first section ends with number 11 and the second section starts with number 12. Again, I don't know why that just mentally helps me so much, but when the different steps are like visual sections and then each individual process is numbered continuously through the whole thing, it just, that's just sort of the instruction setup that I like the best. So after I make the sleeve plackets, which I don't know why I always think they're more complicated than they are, then I will just make some pleats on the ends of the sleeves and then attach the sleeves. These are sewn on the flat, which is wonderful. I always like sewing sleeves on the flat. I don't have to do any tricky insertion. So once I get the sleeves sewn in, it's time to move on to the next sheet of paper, which will be finishing the cuffs on the sleeves, then doing the collar, then hemming and finishing. Now I am sewing the plackets onto the sleeves. I would not do this again with this heavy of a weight of fabric. Shirt jacket has placket on sleeves, that makes sense. Most coats don't do this because coating weight fabric is way too heavy. So if I made this pattern again, I would either use a lighter weight material, just more of a light jacketing rather than a heavier wool coating, or I would omit the plackets altogether because it was just a lot of folds and stuff. It was a lot of bulk and just kind of awkward. And then I just sewed the pleats down. And then I'm doing the side seams now. It's one long seam because these are on the flat, which I like. Do a really good press of the side seams, and then I'm going to overcast them. And top stitch them down. I like top stitching them down. It just gives it a nice clean finish. So now I'm starting on the cuffs. I'm just assembling the two cuff pieces. I used a little bit of black linen for the cuff lining because I didn't have quite enough of the outer fabric to do it. So just sewing on the cuff here, switch my machine into free arm mode for that. Now I'm starting with the collar, sewing the collar pieces together. Always pressing the living heck out of them. This is the under collar and top collar going together. Then I'm attaching the under collar onto the body of the coat. I just whip stitch the remaining undercollar seam over top of the seam allowance. Now I am hemming, just very basic hem, you know, folding the bottom up. So I'm starting on the patch pockets now. I just turned in the seam allowances on the pockets and then pressed them down. Then I'm going to move on to top stitching down the seam allowances on the pockets. Then I'm going to carefully place the pockets on the jacket front, pin them in place. I haven't had a lot of luck with patch pockets in the past, so I decided to try them again, give it the old college try. And it worked out much better this time than it has before. I think partially it's because this machine is really good at delivering a good power at a low speed. And partially is I was just more careful and I had a better needle and I knew better what my thread weight should be. Y'all, please forgive me if I look like a 70s Dracula or something here. I'm trying to get this coat to show up with this dark brown, so I have every light I can pointed at me, plus the daylight and the exposure cranked up. So I can tell that I'm very much washed out in this, but it's about the coat, or the jacket. So I'm really happy with it. I think it's pretty cool. Definitely has this like 70s collar, but I'm fine with that. I was worried about the way the patch pockets look, just because I was worried about sewing patch pockets. I've made some really bad ones before, But these came out nicely sewn, and I still felt like they looked awkward. I feel like it would be better with welt pockets. But I've been told that the patch pockets don't look strange at all. They look very professional. You can't really tell. They don't look cheesy, I guess, is what I'm thinking and I was worried about. But I've had other people who may or may not be overly nice to me tell me they don't look cheesy. But it fits great. I like having the plackets on the cuffs, even though they were a pain in the arse to sew. It fits really nicely. I think I would add a lining to it in the future. I think I might add a lining to this one if I'm feeling frisky. But I'm really happy with it. It's a nice, comfortable, it's a light jacket, so this is not a heavy winter coat, but it's a shirt jacket. I wasn't expecting a heavy winter coat. If I made it again, I don't think I would go with wool coating for a shirt jacket. Hindsight's 2020, and I can tell now that that's not the perfect choice for it. But it is still really nice, and it's good, and I'm happy with it. So I will try to get some close-up shots of it. Hopefully I can take pictures of it that have it show up a little bit better. But yeah, I'm happy with it. I think it fits well. I'm a little unhappy with how the cuffs fit. When I go like this, you know, they come up an appropriate amount for a shirt or like a suit jacket or something. For a winter coat, I do not want my cuffs to fit correctly. I want them to be the biggest, longest cuffs in the history of the world so I can just curl my hands up in them. But for a light jacket, it's fine. Currently not in the season where I'm getting a lot of light jacket. It's already November. So just a single layer of wool is warm, but not warm enough. I would have to layer it. And I have layered this with a hoodie. My camera battery just died while I was filming, and I only charged it for like 5 minutes, so I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to film. This tells me I'm at full charge until about 4 seconds before it dies, so I don't know what I got in there and what I don't. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it at all, please consider giving a like. That will help me out a lot. And if you haven't subscribed, that would be very helpful for me as well. Thank you. I am going to get started on my next videos, which will involve making another coat, a chore jacket, coach jacket, using this fabric. So this is a very dark green, like cotton duck. It's like, maybe not duck, it's like a canvas weight fabric, but it has like the sheen of a sateen and sort of like softness. So it's like a really nice, sheeny, sort of soft, malleable canvas weight cotton. I don't know what in the heck to call it, but I like it. And then I'm going to be lining it with this, which is just a very lightweight rayon. And I'm going to be quilting the rayon lining with some flannel. I got this to make a shirt out of, and it turned out to be just a little bit too soft and fuzzy for my liking. I don't think it would hold up very well as a shirt, or it would just be a little too fuzzy. So I'm just going to, you know, I like the way it looks, but it's just not a great garment weight fabric. It just really wouldn't hold up as a shirt, I think. So what I'm going to do is use this as sort of like the batting or interlining of a coat. And so I'm going to quilt the rayon together with this flannel, and that will be that. I also have a couple of ideas for some videos where I might be making a couple of little Barbie dresses with some vintage sewing patterns. I thought that would be an interesting way to make different types of sewing, like, you know, some little dresses. I have no need in my real life to sew dresses, but I could sew little miniature Barbie dresses, and that might be a fun way to try something different. And I am also thinking about filming a completely different type of video where I make a fruitcake. I know fruitcakes are controversial, but I really like them, and I'm going to make one for Christmas. And Lord knows I spend enough money on a fruitcake. Nothing will make sewing look cheap until you start baking. So thank you again for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the future.